Back in the late 70s in Rapids Parish, Louisiana, I was about 8 years old when I had an experience that still gives me chills. I haven't shared this story with many people, but it feels like it happened just yesterday. My family was big on camping during the summer, and on this particular trip, we went to a spot just outside of Indian Creek, a place the locals call Little Indian Creek. It was nighttime and everyone was asleep, but I woke up to the sounds of raccoons rummaging through the garbage cans not too far from our campsite. To me, as a young kid, watching them was pretty entertaining. They were just being their mischievous selves, and I decided to sneak out of bed to watch them play while everyone else continued to sleep. I'm not sure how long I watched them, but I noticed that the raccoons kept glancing toward the woods. The woods were separated from our camp by a small creek, about 4 or 5 feet across, but quite deep, at least 6 feet. Suddenly, I heard a loud splash, like something wading through the water, and at that moment, the raccoons scattered. Feeling uneasy, I crouched down, with just my eyes peeking through the window of our camper, hoping that whatever was coming across the creek wouldn't notice me. Then I saw it. As it emerged from the water, it let out a deep growl followed by some grunting sounds as it climbed up the embankment. I then heard another splash, signaling that something else had entered the creek. My heart was pounding as I watched the first creature come into the light from our lanterns, which my parents had left burning for security. I was terrified when I realized just how big it was, at least 7 feet tall, broad shoulders, long arms, and covered in hair. Another creature soon followed, making the same growls and grunting sounds. I was so scared that I started to cry quietly, hoping they wouldn't hear me. I slid back down onto my bed and pulled the covers over my head, trying to make myself invisible. I lay there, frozen with fear, for what felt like an eternity. Eventually, I heard them leave, retreating the same way they had come. Once they were gone, the raccoons returned, but there was no way I could get back to sleep that night. The memory of those creatures has stayed with me ever since. I remember it was the winter of 2017 in Grant Parish, Louisiana, near Colfax. There were lots of times I heard strange howls and loud wood knocks around where I live. It was a spooky feeling. My place is right next to a big hardwood forest beside a swamp. They had been clearing parts of it, and I think that's what brought these creatures closer to my home. One night I was sitting on my front porch with my dog when I started hearing the knocking sound. It was just like before, and my heart skipped a beat. My dog suddenly took off running towards the noise. I kind of knew what might be making that sound, and even though my dog is tough, I was still really worried about him. So I ran after him, calling his name. I could hear the little bell on his collar jingling away as he dashed into the woods. It was super dark, making it really hard to see, so I didn't go too far in. Then I got really concerned when I no longer heard the jingling or his barking. Panic set in, and I started yelling, "I want my dog back." Suddenly, there was a wood knock not too far from me, followed by what sounded like something pounding its chest. Then I heard something charge through the brush and stop next to a tree. I could barely make it out, but I saw some eyeshine. I shouted at it to back away and let my dog come back so we could both return home. To my surprise, the creature did just that. My dog bolted back towards me, and together we hurried back to the house. I think the creature might have grabbed my dog, but fortunately, it didn't seem to hurt him. In this area, there's a long history of strange events, like stolen chickens, missing watermelons, vegetables gone from gardens, garbage knocked over, and those unsettling sounds that come from what's left of the woods across the road. The strange part was when I later looked through the images on my phone. I had been using it for light when I went after my dog, and in one of the photos, There was a silhouette of a large creature standing by a tree, less than 20 yards from me. It was quite a shock to see that. In the summer of 1980, when I was about 12, my family lived in Leesville, Louisiana, because my dad was stationed at Fort Polk with the military. One day, my two friends and I decided to explore some woods just off what locals called the Texas Highway. We ventured pretty far into the woods, to the point where we were on the brink of getting lost. It was then that we stumbled across a sizable stream about 9 feet wide, with the bank sitting about 5 feet above the water. As we were making our way through the woods, we suddenly saw two creatures crouched down by the stream on the other side, drinking water. We all froze, both amazed and terrified at what we were seeing. These creatures looked like human-like apes, completely covered in dark brown hair, with their faces being slightly lighter. They were standing there staring at us, and we stared back. One looked like an adult, maybe a female, and the other seemed much smaller, like a youngster. Despite our fear, the creatures seemed as startled as we were. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only around 30 seconds, the adult made a hand motion to the younger one, and they turned away from the stream and took off running through the woods. They were surprisingly quiet, except for the rustling of leaves and branches. At that moment, we snapped back to our senses and bolted in the opposite direction, not slowing down until we reached the road. Thankfully, we found our way back without any trouble. My first thought was how fortunate we were. I'd heard stories of bears attacking to protect their cubs, and I couldn't help but compare that to our encounter. It was a huge relief that these creatures didn't feel threatened enough to come after us. We never mentioned the encounter to our parents because we weren't supposed to be wandering those woods in the first place. It's an experience that none of us will ever forget. My experience happened back in the late 80s, during the fall, out in Caddo Parish, Louisiana. It was one of those perfect fall days, and I was out in my boat scouting for places to duck hunt. I had pulled up alongside the Black Bayou, planning to check out a pond on the other side of the levee that usually attracts a lot of ducks. As I was trying to sneak up on the pond, hoping to surprise some ducks, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, about 200 yards away. I quickly slid behind a tree to get a better look. What I saw was on the other side of the levee, a creature that seemed a bit over 6 feet tall, with shaggy dark brown hair, walking upright like a human. It hadn't noticed me yet, and was heading straight in my direction. The creature stopped about 100 yards away and looked my way. It raised its head as if sniffing the air, and I realized with the wind at my back, it could probably smell me. I'd taken a shower that morning using shampoo and deodorant like usual, and at that moment I figured its sense of smell must be incredibly sharp. I wasn't scared, though. I had my shotgun with me, and the creature didn't seem aggressive at all. I was frozen behind the tree, just watching. It paused for a few seconds, and then suddenly took off, running directly over the levee toward the woods. The woods run along the Black Bayou, and it was pretty thick. I didn't waste any time and ran to the top of the levee, hoping to catch another glimpse. It was about 50 yards away, and I was pushing hard to make it up there. By the time I got to the top, the creature had already covered 200 yards and was disappearing into the woods. I was amazed at how fast it could run. I listened for a while, hearing it crash through the trees until everything went silent. That's when it hit me, how quiet it had been around me, even before I saw the creature. No rustling leaves or any other usual sounds of wildlife. The wind direction meant I couldn't catch any scent, but I was left standing there, puzzled, trying to process what just happened. I know it sounds unbelievable, but I truly think I saw what I saw.